What if you could prove that God exists, using not faith, not science, but just a single, perfectly crafted definition? It sounds kind of nuts, right? But that's the wild claim of the ontological argument. It's a philosophical puzzle that for a solid 1,000 years has been tying brains in knots. So let's see if we can untie it.
So let's be clear. We're not talking about looking for clues through a telescope or anything like that. This is way stranger. This is an attempt to basically pull reality out of a logical hat. Can a sentence, just by being cleverly put together, actually make something exist? The ontological argument screams yes, and we're about to find out how.
So, where did this crazy idea even come from? Well, our story starts way back in the 11th century with a monk named Anselm. And Anselm was totally convinced he'd found a kind of logical cheat code, a secret bridge that could take you from a simple idea in your head straight to the existence of God in the real world.
And let me tell you, this argument became a total battleground for the heavyweights of philosophy. Some of the biggest names you can think of defended it like their lives depended on it, while others tried their hardest to tear it down. So come on, let's step into the ring and see for ourselves why this idea is so powerful and so controversial.
Here's our 1,000-year roadmap. We start with Anselm setting his logical trap. Then, almost immediately, his fellow monk Ganilo cries foul. Centuries later, René Descartes dusts it off and gives it a new spin. And finally, the legend Immanuel Kant steps in to deliver what many think is the final knockout blow. All right, let's dive in. First stop, 1078, to meet the guy who started it all, Saint Anselm. Okay, pay close attention because literally everything hinges on this one definition. Anselm says, for a minute, forget everything else you've heard about God. Just accept this one rule. God is a being than which nothing greater can be conceived. In other words, the absolute top dog, the greatest thing you could possibly imagine. You cannot top it. Got it? Good, because that's all he's going to need.
Next up, Anselm points out something pretty obvious. He says things can exist in two ways. Some things, like Santa Claus or a unicorn, only exist in our minds, in our understanding, as he put it. But other things, like the sun, exist both in our minds and out there in actual reality. Makes sense, right? And now, Anselm springs his trap. Follow me here. Step 1, we have the idea of the greatest conceivable being in our minds. Okay. Step 2, which is greater, an imaginary Ferrari or a real Ferrari you can actually drive? The real one, obviously. So existing in reality is greater than just existing in the mind. Okay, now for the twist. If the greatest conceivable being exists only in your mind, then you can actually think of something greater, namely that same exact being, but existing in reality. And boom, that's a logical contradiction. You just conceived of something greater than the greatest conceivable being, which, by definition, is impossible. The only way out of this logical mess, the greatest conceivable being has to exist in reality. And there you have it. In his own words, Anselm basically drops the mic. Case closed. It's this incredible moment of logical jujitsu. It honestly feels like a magic trick, jumping from an idea to a real thing. The question is it a fair move? Well, not everybody thought so. Almost right away, another monk named Ganilo started thinking, wait a minute. He felt like Anselm was playing a clever trick, and he came up with an equally clever way to call him out on it. I mean, you can just feel the sass in Ganilo's response here. He's basically saying, if you really think this argument works, I'm not sure who's more foolish, you for making it or me for even listening to it. Ganilo's comeback is just brilliant. It's a parody. He says, fine, Anselm, I'll use your logic. Let's imagine the lost island, the most perfect, amazing island you can conceive of. It's got everything. Now that island exists in our minds, but a real island is greater than an imaginary one. So by your logic, this perfect lost island must exist in reality. By using the exact same steps to prove something obviously silly, Ganilo tried to show the whole argument was flawed from the get-go. And for a long time, Ganilo's island pretty much sunk Anselm's argument. But then, centuries later, in the 1600s, this guy named René Descartes, you might know him from I Think, Therefore I Am, decided to bring the argument back from the dead with a new and improved version. Now, Descartes makes a really subtle but important change here. He shifts the definition from Anselm's a being than which nothing greater can be conceived to simply a supremely perfect being.
This small tweak moves the focus away from a competition of greatness and more toward a checklist of what a perfect being must include. So Descartes' new take is this: existence is a form of perfection. A supremely perfect being has to have all perfections, right? Well, existence is on that list. For him, saying a perfect being does not exist is just as illogical as saying a triangle has four sides or a mountain has no valley. Existence isn't something you add on, it's just baked right into the concept itself.
So Descartes' version looked pretty slick, until another philosophical giant, Immanuel Kant, came along. And Kant wasn't about to mess around with parity islands. He went straight for the logical jugular. Here it is, Kant's devastating blow. He argued that existence is not a predicate. Okay, predicate is just a fancy philosophy word for a property or a quality of something. Kant is saying existence isn't a feature, like being powerful or being wise or being blue. Those things describe what a thing is like. Existence just states that it is.
This car example makes Kant's point crystal clear. Imagine you're describing your perfect car. You say it's economical, it's safe, it's comfortable, it's got great performance. Now, what if you add, and it exists to that list? Have you actually added a new feature to the car itself? Nope. All you've done is say that a car with those other features is actually real. A real $100 bill doesn't contain any more value than an imaginary one. It's just real.
But hold on, here's where it gets fun and messy. What if you found out tomorrow that Winnie the Pooh was a real historical bear? Wouldn't finding out that he exists radically change your whole concept of him? It kind of feels like it would. This just goes to show how slippery this whole idea of existence is, and it's why philosophers are still chewing on this puzzle. So, after all that, what's the final score? Well, you'd be hard-pressed to find any philosopher today who thinks the ontological argument is a slam-dunk proof. But, as a pure, brain-bending logical puzzle, it's absolutely undeniable. So let's recap this epic duel real quick. Anselm started it all, trying to define God into reality. Guanilo shot back with his perfect island parody. Descartes rebooted the argument, centering it on perfection, and then Kant came in with what most see as the final takedown, arguing that existence isn't even a feature to begin with.
Which leaves us with the same 1,000-year-old question. Is the ontological argument some kind of secret key that unlocks the nature of reality itself? Or is it just the ultimate philosophical magic trick, showing us how easily words and language can fool our own brains? The debate is still open, and now you're officially part of it.